My brother Stan went to the Assemblies of God Ministerial Conference, which is held every year, and this particular year it was at Louth in Lincolnshire, and the photograph I'm looking at is Pastor Norman Charter, who was very friendly with my brother Stan, and at the end of the conference Norman would like to go to Hull because his full name was Norman Charter, and there was a very large firm of estate agents in Hull called Charters, and it was some connection somewhere in the marriage where Norman knew them. So he asked Stan, could he come back to Hull with him? So Stan wrote to my mum, and we arranged things a little different, and so we accommodated Norman to come back with Stan and stay with us. And so he spent a few days, Norman spent a few days in Hull, going down to these estate agents, which was a very large firm in a street called Albion Street in Hull. And then eventually the time came when they both had to go back to the churches. Stan went back to Rotherham, Norman went back to his assembly, but I don't know what assembly he was in charge of at that time, but his hometown was Ramsgate. And eventually he must have had an eye on Doris, because eventually Doris, my sister, said she'd had a letter from Norman, and she let me read it for a little while, and then one or two letters came and she passed them on to me. Then all of a sudden I never got them. I said, haven't you heard from Norman yet? She said, oh yes. I said, well, you haven't let me read the letter. Oh, she said, you can't read it now. So evidently it was getting a bit warmer. Anyway, let's cut a long story short. Eventually Doris married Norman Charter, and unfortunately we'd only just opened the big Elim Church, the Hull City Temple on Hesel Road, and because it had been closed for quite a number of years, it hadn't been re-registered for the holding of marriages, so we had to hire the Thornton Street. Great Thornton Street had a large Methodist church down there, and so the wedding ceremony was taken there, and then they eventually went away. And they used to live at a place called Nuneaton in Warwickshire, and Norman had the assembly for quite a long time. But Norman Charter, unfortunately, he was quite a nice chap. I appreciated him. We got on very well together and everything. And my memory serves me right. He passed away. I can't remember the actual date, but I think it was the May of 1984, because it was just previous to Grace and I moving into the home where I am now, namely Homesea House. And Doris, I had to carry on her own for a little while, but Norman passed away then. But my sister, all the family decided one time that they would evacuate, and they all went to live in the States. Norman got a preaching engagement in there, and they did ministry, and they eventually all settled down. So at the present time there's just the 5 boys. Doris had 5 sons, and they're all still there in various parts of the state. And my sister Doris, she carried on after she'd lost Norman, because he was buried, of course, it happened in the States. And then Doris died recently, but she did reach the age of 101, so she did very well indeed. So there's that picture of Norman there certainly brought back many happy memories of the family and of Norman himself. Yeah.